السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. باب الإنفاق مما يحب ومن الجيد. We continue our book Riyad-us Saliheen by Imam Nawawi rahmatullah alayhi. This is the 37th chapter of the book, and the chapter is with regards to spending for the sake of Allah from that which you love the most and that which is valuable and good. And we began this chapter a few days ago where we began with few ayats of the Quran. There is only one hadith in the chapter. Inshallah, we'll try to cover this hadith. And the hadith is actually a story from amongst the stories of the life of Sahaba radiallahu anhu ajma'in. And I'll read a portion of the Arabic because it's a little longer. وَأَنْ أَنَسٍ رضي الله تعالى عنه قال كان أبو طلحة رضي الله عنه أكثر الأنصار بالمدينة مالا من نخل وكان أحب أموالهم إليه بير روحا. So this is a hadith where Anas radiallahu anhu reports, and he mentions that from amongst the people of Medina, from amongst the people of Ansar, the most wealthiest individual from amongst the entire companions of the Ansar, he was none other than Abu Talha radiallahu anhu. And before we even continue further into the details of this, there are two groups of what we are known as Sahaba, the Muhajirin and Ansar. But their muhabbat and their love and their connection was such that if there was no hijrah, if there was no migration from Mecca towards Medina, there would not even been two groups from amongst the Sahaba known as Muhajirin and Ansar. Because the Sahaba lived as an ummat, right? That's what they were, right? Yes, Sahaba differed, but their hearts were the closest. So from amongst the people of Ansar, and Ansar are those who not only opened their hearts and their homes, but they gave everything to the people of Muhajirin of Mecca, to the extent that Rasulullah ﷺ said that if there was no hijrat, I would have wished to be from amongst the Ansar for the hospitality that Allah has given the people of Ansar. The Nabi of Allah ﷺ said, if there was a wadi, a valley of people staying at a night, I would find the people of Ansar and I would spend time with them. The Nabi of Allah ﷺ said, the outer clothing of my body are like the Muhajirin, and the inner clothing of my body, which is touching body itself, are the Ansar of the Ummah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these were the people that gave everything for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, of course, we can talk about this for a long time, but Anas radiallahu anhu reports that from amongst the people of Ansar, Abu Talha radiallahu anhu was the richest amongst all the Ansar of Medina, with large property and palm trees and other possessions that he had, which were very beloved to him. And from amongst the thing that he loved the most, meaning his most valuable asset that Allah had given him from amongst all the wealth itself, was a garden known as Beruha. It was a garden that was وَكَانَ مُسْتَقْبِلَةً لِلْمَسْجِدِ. It was right across the masjid of Rasulullah ﷺ. So it had the best location. And not only this, it was the place where Rasulullah ﷺ often visited, and he drank fresh water from that garden that Abu Talha radiallahu anhu had. And subhanAllah, during the course of this time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals this ayat of the Quran, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3, verse number 92, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions and says, by no means shall you attain al-birr, piety, righteousness, goodness, closeness to Allah, Jannah, paradise, unless you do not spend in Allah's cause of that which you love the most. When this ayat of the Quran was revealed, now, subhanAllah, Abu Talha radiallahu anhu, knowing that Allah has given him all of this, and the most beautiful and the most closest wealth towards him, and the most beloved of things towards him is al-Bi'ruha. He comes to the Nabi of Allah ﷺ and he said, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, Allah has revealed this ayat of the Quran that you cannot attain piety till you do not spend from what you love the most, and the dearest thing to me as my wealth and my possession is Beruha. O Prophet of Allah ﷺ, I want to give all of this for sadaqah. I can't hold this anymore, Ya Rasulullah, because I want to attain the closeness of Allah. And subhanAllah, brothers and sisters, one ayat of the Quran is able to change the lives of Sahaba. Right? May Allah allow our hearts to be motivated by the Quran. We read the Quran, we listen to the Quran, we reflect over it, but we need to understand how much do we practice the book of Allah. So when Rasulullah ﷺ heard this, and while he's saying, Ya Rasul, I anticipate the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, he said, well done. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's word towards him was, Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, bakhin, enjoy and happiness, meaning, wow, what a great decision, what a great decision. It's an Arabic metaphor where they say, bakhin. In Arabic linguistic, it refers to like, well done. Like, that was the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the greatest profit. This is the greatest earning that you could ever have. But then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I have heard what you have already said, but I think that you should spend this upon your closest relatives. Meaning, don't give it in sadaqah, but leave it for your children and for your families and your closest relative, and keep them and leave them in a good condition so that they are not asking others for anything. So Abu Talha radiallahu anhu distributed all of that into the nearest relatives and cousins of his. So there are multiple things that we can derive from this very particular hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. First and foremost, this hadith mentions, brothers and sisters, the spirit of the obedience of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They said sami'na and wata'na. They listened and they obeyed. And also not just obeyed, but they made the effort to make sure that they can do the best for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam to attain the highest level of virtue. It was a race not for just the dunya itself, but it was a race towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one. Number two, they learned to perfect their iman and their faith by being able to make the sacrifice of the things that they love the most, not all, but portions of what they love the most for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And third thing we learn from this hadith is that in the matters of sadaqah and charity, of course, one should look for their closest relatives. If you find people closest to you who are in need, then support them and help them, because you will get double the reward. Silatul raham, meaning relationship, and number two, sadaqah and charity as well. But if you don't find people closest to you in relationship, then you find those individuals who don't ask, but they are in need. They don't do su'al to people, but they are in need. Then you try to find these individuals and make sure that you reach those individuals. And I'll conclude with these words of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu, amongst the wealthiest of the companion. When Uthman radiallahu anhu would give his charity and sadaqah, he would say that the amount of wealth that you received that you thought you deserved, he said, I as an individual was more deserving or desiring more of the rahmah of Allah than you were desiring the wealth from anyone else. Meaning, I know that you were in need and you were hoping that someone would help you. He said, my desire of the rahmah of Allah was more than what you were desiring that someone would bring help towards you in need itself, right? So this was the generosity of Sahaba, that even when they gave that, Ya Allah, this is a rahmah from you to us, that you allowed us to be amongst those who can give for the sake of Allah. May Allah give us tawfiq and ability to practice and follow this in our lives as well, inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah.